Namaskar everyone. Welcome to this seminar of Indic Studies Toronto. Today our topic is Adi Shankaracharya. We are going to talk about his life and works, and we have the privilege of hosting Dr. Sucheta Paranjpeji again. She is a retired professor of Sanskrit and an associate faculty at Leipzig University, Germany, and a visiting faculty at Macalester College, St. Paul. And she continues to be a passionate student of Vedic studies, particularly the Mahabharata. So, namaskar, Sucheta ji, and welcome. Please continue.
Namo Namaha. Vedartha Shastra Vidyanam Alayam Karunalayam Vedartha Shastra Vidyanam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. The meaning is quite clear that before I start my talk, I would like to pay respect and homage to Shankara, who is Loka Shankara, who has done Kalyana, or who has been benevolent to all the world, entire world here in Bharatavarsha. And because he was Alaya, that is abode of Veda, Artha, Shastra and Vidya. So just see, in one adjective, we have covered all the qualifications, whatever he knew, Vedartha, Shastra, Vidyana. I won't go into the details of who Shankara was because you know, but there is one thing which I want to tell you, and that is he was born in a family of Nambudiri Brahmins in Kerala in a place called Kalti. It is on the banks of the river Advai, and in 74, when I went there, because I wanted to visit his Janmasthala, the birthplace of Shankaracharya, it was a quiet little place. But after 25 years, I went again, and the airport of Cochin has been built in Kalti, and therefore you can imagine how the whole thing must have changed. But the best thing is, they have built a great temple of Shankaracharya, and they have collected in their library, they have some books, some manuscripts, some students chanting Vedas and all, and the entire atmosphere they have tried to recreate. So I was glad. He was a child prodigy. He knew everything. I mean, I still cannot explain what a child prodigy is, but I, being a intense believer in Hindu philosophy, I still feel that it is from your previous birth that you get all this knowledge. At the age of 3, his father was Shiva Guru, and his mother was Aryamba or Sati, as she was called. His father realized that here I have a child who is a gifted child and he needs special training. Okay, so what he did was, at the age of 3, he did his what we call Chuda Karana, that is sending him to a local guru. Shankara went at the age of 3 to a guru who taught him Malayalam. Within 6 months, he knew all Malayalam. So Shiva Guru said, now I must do his Upanayana. And remember, Upanayana is nothing. Nowadays, we perform that as more or less as a ceremony, as a cultural event. But Upanayana is taking admission in a Gurukula, making sure that the child gets proper education from a proper guru. So he said, I will perform his Upanayana at the age of 5, earlier than what others do. But unfortunately, Shiva Guru died. But Sati remembered her husband's wish. She completed that. And Shankaracharya he had his Upanayana when he was only 5. And then he started learning Vedas in a formal way. Generally, at the age of 8, students go to Gurukula, and at the age of 24, they come out. So just imagine they are there for 16 years. But here, Shankara, as I told you, is a gifted child. And when he was 12, he knew all the Vedas. He hardly took 6, 7 years to complete the Veda Dhyayana, the studies of Veda. And his local teacher there, he told him from Gurukula that you are such an intelligent person that you should go to one Govinda Pada Yati who lives in Omkareshwar, which is called Omkar Mandata now, Omkareshwar on the banks of Yamuna. And then Shankaracharya went there. Before that, there are many stories, but I will focus more on his important works and important life pattern that he laid. So he went there, and I just cannot imagine. I have been to Kalti, so I tell you it is near Kochi. And then he went to Narmada in Madhya Pradesh in India, and he walked there, and then he took proper sannyasa diksha from Guru Govinda Pal. To take a sannyasa, you need some proper initiation ceremony. All that was done, and Govindapad started teaching him what we call Shastrartha. Now, what is Shastrartha? Shastra is not only science. No, Shastra is everything. All the philosophical systems, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, Vedanta, this, that, whatever knowledge we have apart from the Vedic literature is called Shastra. He learned Shastras in, what do you think, how many years? 4 years. By 16, he knew everything, and then his Guru, he told him, you are amazing. You already know everything. So what you should do is, instead of sitting in my Gurukula, go to Kashi. Kashi was the center of Vedic Sanatan Dharma. Okay. I'm going to use this word a lot, Vedic Sanatan Dharma. So he said, go to Kashi, it is the center, and there you stand and teach whatever you know, all the Shastrartha and Vedartha to people who gather there. It was like an academic city, where everybody was full of quest for knowledge and jidnyasa, as we call it. So he did that. He went to Kashi, he walked. Okay. Along with him, there were a couple of other students of Govindapad. They reached there, and you must have been, at least some of you must have been to Kashi, Banaras, Varanasi, whatever. And there, on the steps of Manikarnika Ghat, this young chap young fellow, who was very young in the sense, he was hardly 12 to 13. And there he started teaching Vedanta. He would just stand in a corner and teach whatever he had decided to all the students. All the students, or rather, I would say all the gathering. There was one person there who used to come every day. In fact, he became his first student. His name was Sanandana. And later on, when he took sannyasa, his name became Padmapada, and he was Shankara's first and favorite student. So a lot of people listened to him, and there Shankara propounded for the first time in his life what is Advaita. In a line, I can tell you what Advaita is. According to Advaita Vedanta school of philosophy, all living beings have Atman, right? I mean, even other schools accept that, but their philosophy is unique in the sense. And then the ultimate reality is called Brahman, a Dvaita. There is no dichotomy, there is no difference between the Atman in me and the Brahman, which is the ultimate reality. This is Advaita Tattvajnana. And Shankara was teaching that. One day, a Chandala came, and Shankara wanted to go and take a bath in Ganga river. So he said, please get away. I want to go ahead. Chandala said, you can. But Shankara said, no, I am a sannyasi and I can't go near you. Chandala says, at one point you were saying that all Atman is same and we are all same and we are identified with Brahman. And now you make this difference between a Chandala Atman and a sannyasi Atman. What kind of, falsehood is this? So Shankara realized his mistake. He realized that instead of just teaching the bookish theory or bookish knowledge, it is important that we practice what we preach. And he paid homage, he touched the feet of that Chandala, and that Chandala apparently was no other than Vyasa, Guru Vyasa himself. And he said to Shankara, go to Badarika Ashram, go to Vyasa Gundha, and start writing commentaries on all the Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, Gita, etc. Shankaracharya took that advice and he started going to Badarika Ashrama, which is Badari Kedar. So, a few of us might have been there, but it is so difficult to reach there even in a car. And Shankaracharya walked from Madhya Pradesh to Himachal. And by now, he had a retinue in the sense there were many followers, many students. In fact, there was a king called Sudhanva who also became his follower. And Sudhanva, along with some of his army soldiers, just to protect Shankaracharya, he would always follow Shankaracharya wherever he went. The most important thing about Shankara is that he was not only a scholar who would sit in the libraries, read books, publish some books and research articles, and sit in what we call ivory tower. He wanted to mix with the people. He realized that if I want to preserve, protect, and promote Vedic Sanatana Dharma, I must take it to the common man. And why did this happen? For that, we have to know a little of political and even religious background of that time. Now, what do you mean by that time? When was Shankara born? When did he do all this great work? It was in the 7th century AD. Now, how can I say that with certainty that it was in 7th century AD? There are at least 30 to 40 booklets, I would say, which were written by contemporaries and students of Shankara while he was alive. And there they have mentioned some situations from which we can guess what time he must be there. One more interesting thing is, one person, a modern scholar, he made Shankaracharya's Janma Patrika from all the references in those different books and said that he was born in AD 686. I'm not sure about that, but we all agree with the fact that Shankaracharya was born on the end of 7th century and he lived he turned the 7th century, and when he died, it was 8th century. This much we know. So this is okay. But during that time, what had happened was that Vedic Sanatana Dharma was threatened by various other sects. Now, before I start, let me make my position very clear. I'm not here to blame or abuse any other religion. I do not want to hurt the religious feelings of any other religion. I'm just telling you what happened in those days. That is 7th century, which means 1400 to 1500 years back. And I'm just reporting what happened there. In those days, the kings, for whatever reason, we know Ashoka did this, they turned to Buddhism. Buddhism per se is not bad, but the moment the king became Buddhist, all the people in his kingdom, they thought that, oh, even I am a Buddhist. And they all became Buddhist. There was Jaina. Buddhism and Jainism were proper religions, so to say. But there were sects. By sects, I mean Kurma, Chandra, Saura, Ganapatya. This Ganapatya has nothing to do with our Ganesha. Upanishadika, nothing to do with our Upanishads. Our in the sense Vedantic Upanishads. There were so many sects, and they were all what we call Tantric. The worst of all was a Tantrika Shaiva Sampradaya, which went by, it is called Panchamakara, Madhya, Mausa, Mithuna, Mudra. So all these things, which have nothing really to do with philosophy, were there in all these sects. And Shankaracharya had to fight against that. So on his journey to Badrinath, he had decided that I will see to it that I will do whatever I can for Vedic Sanatana Dharma. I would simply say Vedic Dharma now. So he started and he came to Rishikesh. Rishikesh is on the banks of Ganga, and it is the step towards Himalaya. First step, and there is one place called Har Ki Pauri, which means that Shiva's first step was there. Whatever, but he went there and he went to a temple. In spite of being a sannyasi, he had no objection to going to temples. So he went there, and there he said, "Where is the idol?" The temple was empty. The temple was empty. So the priest told him that some foreign invaders come here, they came here, they distorted our murti, and we did not like it, and therefore we kind of hid it in the waters of Ganga, and now we cannot find it. Shankaracharya immediately took a dip in Ganga. He searched and ultimately found that Vishnu Murti. And then he reinstated that Murti in the temple. And this is a very eloquent example. It was not the Murti which he had reinstated. It was the faith in Vedic Dharma that he had reinstated. And this is what he has done all through his life. Then he went to Badarikashrama, he went to Vyasagumha. Those of you who have been to Badarikashrama, you know what a beautiful sight it is. He sat there and he wrote commentaries on first Upanishads, 10 Upanishads, Ishakena Kata Prashna Mundaka, etc. Then he wrote commentary on what we call Badarayana Sutra, which is a principal text that explains Uttara Mimamsa or Advaita Vedanta also, and Gita. Okay, so at the age of 16, he had completed this work. There is a beautiful verse about Shankaracharya. There are many, but this one I like. It says, Ashtame Chaturvedi. At the age of 8, he knew 4 Vedas. At the age of 12, Dvadashe Sarva Shastravid, he knew all the Shastras. Shodashe Krutaman Bhashyam. At the age of 16, Shodasha, he had completed all the commentaries, but the last line is very sad. Dvatrimshe Munirabhyadat. And when he was 32, he passed away. He died a very, not tragic, but he died a very young, when he was very tender age. 32 is hardly anything. And otherwise, he would have done much more than what he could do in his short lifetime. So he went to Badarikashrama, he did that, and then he started what is described in all these 30 texts. Shankara Digvijaya, Shankara Vijaya Sara, Shankara Mala. There are so Shankara Deshikendra. There are so many texts, which describe his Digvijaya. Now you know what is Digvijaya. Dig is direction, Vijaya is victory. So you win in all the 4 directions. But the most important thing in about Shankara is he did not want to annex any land to himself, What he wanted was Punaruthana of Vedic Dharma. I'm purposely using the Sanskrit word. And we all know Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Glanir Bhavati Bharata Abhyuthanam Adharmasya Tadatnyanam Srijamyaham. So probably he really was an incarnation of some Lord. I mean, I sincerely believe that. Anyway, so he said that while I am here, I will conquer all the directions. And then Sudhanva, and in the meanwhile, there had many other students who had gathered and they would go and do everything. You will be surprised. There are other texts, not the ones which describe Shankara's greatness or glory, but these other texts say, how the king used to become Buddhist? And the shloka says, Sashishya Sangha Pravishanti Rajnyam Sashishya Sangha. Along with groups of many students, these Buddha monks would enter the court of the king and would say, oh king, you have become a Buddhist now, and therefore all your praja, all your people also are Buddhist, which was not right. The people did not understand anything what had happened to them at all. Shankara's method was very different. He, please remember, I'm using such words which Shankara didn't even think of these words. He was not there to convert people. Okay, he was there to convince them of the greatness of Vedic Sanatana Dharma. And how did he do that? He didn't have a Shastra in his hand, but he had Shastra in his hand. We know that there are some religions which by force converted people. If you don't convert, then you are beheaded. There is absolutely no doubt about that. There are some religions, I mean, this was ridiculous, but our ancestors were naive, and they really believed that if I drink water from the well in which a loaf of bread has been thrown, then I lose my Hindutva and then I become someone else. Shankara tried to convince these people by arguing with them, by discussing with them, and by convincing them. And this is very important because to go to people, talk to them, and then tell them the greatness of our dharma is important. He didn't do this, that go to a king's court and say, oh, now you have become a Vedic Sanatana Dharmi, and therefore all your praja is also that. He never did that. In this Digvijaya, he went to various places. But I mean, right up to, that when he established his mathas, there was one in near Badri Kedara, then that is called Jyotir Matha, one in Dwaraka, which is in the west, one in Puri, which is on the eastern coast of India, and then one in Shrungeri, or it was called Shrungagiri. That is, there were many peaks, Shrunga is peaks, and therefore Shrungeri was the very important center of Vedic Advaita. So when he established these sanghas and all, he realized that there has to be some discipline. You will be surprised. In those days, there is a text called Mahanushasana. And in Mahanushasana, Shankara tells you how a matha should go on. How does it work? He says in every math, there would be 4 sannyasis. Just remember this. All these 4 sannyasis are great academicians, and of course, everybody is very good, well behaved, and all that. That goes without saying. Secondly, there will be a manishi, and everyone else, along with the manishi is the manager. Along with manishi, all the others will be gruhastha, and they would look after the admin of the month, administration of the month. This clearly shows that just as we have a vice chancellor in the university, who is an academician, and we have a registrar who is an expert in administration. Shankaracharya also said that. So imagine he had a vision, of what a vision which made him the greatest founder of all the mathas. While he came down to all these places, I really wonder how he walked all this distance and how it must have been such a tough job, but he did that. And why did he do that? As I said, just to re-establish Vedic Sanatan Dharma. There are some people about whom we must talk when I talk about Shankara, and that is one of them is Mandana Mishra. Mandana Mishra was from Mahishmati, and Shankaracharya is from Uttara Mimamsa. Mandana Mishra is from Purva Mimamsa. What do you mean by that? Purva Mimamsa lays a lot of stress only on rites and ritual, whereas Uttara Mimamsa or Vedanta teaches mostly only spiritual things. They do not believe in rituals. So this journey from ritual to spiritual was very important. Shankaracharya went there. There is a story, I mean, just by way of a little entertainment, you must know this. When Shankara goes to Mahishmati, he doesn't know where exactly Mandana Mishra lives. So he asks some women, who are washing clothes on the banks of the river, and he said, "Can you show me the house of Mandana Mishra?" And they say, "Jagad Dhruvam va, Jagadud Dhruvam va, Yatra Giro." They say, "Why ask us? When you go to that house, even the parrots and the birds which are kept in the cage, they are discussing things like, is this world permanent or is this world non-permanent? Is Brahman the Satya? Or, I mean, they have been listening to only such discussions all through their life. They, in the sense, the birds. So even the birds are smart there. So just imagine what Mandana Mishra must have been. And then they had we call it Shastrartha again, which means Purva Paksha, Uttara Paksha, and Mandana Mishra, of course, is defeated, and he changes his ashrama, and from his marriage, from Gruhastha, he became sannyasi. Shankara appointed him in Shrungeri Math. Okay, now this is important because Shrungeri for quite some years has been the seat of authority for Shankara school of philosophy. In fact, if I mistake not, in Columbia University in US, it was Shrungeri, probably Shrungeri or maybe Kanti, I'm not sure now, I have read it long back, which started a Shankara school chair for philosophy. In fact, it was only a couple of days back that somebody told me that Kanchi Shankara Peetha has started an MBA course only for women. Now, why are these things important? Because the tradition of taking your knowledge to people is still there, is seen still there in all the Shankara schools. And that is why it is important. In fact, in Sanskrit, there is a Subhashita. Yah Kriyavan Sa Pandita. Only a scholar with big glasses and all that, he's not a real Pandita. A Pandita is the one who goes right up to the people and teaches them everything. On this Digvijaya Yatra, Shankara defeated many people. And again, by defeated, I do not mean he fought with them or he killed any one of them. No, no way. He just convinced them by discussing things. And this is important, because, for example, in Sri Shailyam near in Andhra Pradesh, there were Ugra Bhairava Tantrikas. And you know what they used to do? They would live in Smashana Bhumi, and that is crematorium. And then they would have ash all over the body. They would drink from, this is kind of very scary, They would drink blood from the skull of old corpses. And all these things were so horrible. And one of them had also planned to kill Shankara. But that time, Sudhanva attacked that man, and Sudhanva killed that man. And Shankara saw to it that he talked to all the remaining people, and the remaining people realized that what he says as a philosophy is way superior to what we are practicing now. And so they left that place and went elsewhere. So everywhere, and there are stories about Shankara, like Digvijaya has said, um, when he went to Kashmir, for example, I don't know how he traveled. By the way, whatever I am telling you is neither chronologically sequential nor is it geographically sequential. I just tell you the important features, the significant highlights, you can say, because in 45 minutes, that's all I can do. In Kashmir, in Srinagar, see the name of the place, Shri Nagara. And there was a Sarvajna Pitha. Pitha is the seat of an Acharya or a Guru. On that Sarvajna Pitha, for that Sarvajna Pitha, there were four doors in four directions. Okay. All the doors were open, but the one in the south was closed. So Shankara said, why is the southern one closed? And he was told that nobody from the south has come here and discussed Shastra. Shankara said, okay, I am here. So people from other directions, not people, scholars from other directions came. They all had a Shastrartha, Shankara one, and then Sarvajna Pitha. Southern door was also open just to show that somebody from south had traveled all this distance to defeat the other Panditas by discussion. In fact, I remember long back when we went to Srinagar, the hill there is called Shankaracharya Hill. And on top of that hill, there is a temple of Sharadamba. We didn't go there, it was impossible, too high and too tall for us. But the hill is still called Shankara Hill. So, which is something which gives you a proof also. From there, apparently, Shankara also went to Nepal and in Pashupatinath. The idol of Pashupatinath in Nepal is one of the what we call Ashtamurtis of Shiva. There are some eight typical idols which have a different kind of sacredness for the Shaiva Parampara. He went there and he realized that there are no priests there. So he said, why is nobody performing the puja and the Shiva Murti is just lying here without being worshipped? Why is that so? They said, oh, there are no priests, and we don't want to continue, do anything about that. Then Shankaracharya said, okay, I have so many people who have come with me right from Kerala, and he appointed two priests to stay there and be two scholars to stay there as priests. And believe me, even today, the priests in Pashupatinath are Nambudri Brahmins. But of course, when the communist regime came, in fact, 3 or 4 years back, these two priests were attacked, but their prime minister intervened and they still continued, but for some time they had left that place and come back. Even in Badrinath temple, the Vishnu Murti was not there. It was Shankara who went to Narada Kunda. A kunda is a water tank in front of a temple, and from there he got that Vishnu Murti. He appointed good priests there. And Badrinath, from Badrinath, Kedarnath is very close by. Well, I mean, if you climb Himalaya, otherwise, of course, you take the road, it's quite a distance, but it is very easy. And I'm very sure these people, just imagine, they wear such scanty clothes, just one kashaya vastra. And how did they survive? How did they walk without shoes? How did they walk without oxygen cylinders and all that? But they did that. And Kedarnath is important because after all his travels during in India, all over India, Shankaracharya took Samadhi in the north in Kedar. When we went to Kedar, of course, I wanted to see the temple also of Kedaranatha, but my main interest was to see this Samadhi of Shankar. We went there and it was in ruins. And I literally cried, because that was something which I never expected. And after 2 years, there was this heavy rain, landslide, mudslide, and whatever remains were there were washed out, was what I read in the news. But somebody recently went there and told me that the new government in India is doing a lot for that Samadhi. They are trying to recreate the whole thing. Not only that, I was glad to know that in Mysore, near Mysore, somewhere, they have erected a huge statue of Shankaracharya, and one is coming up either in Dwarka or somewhere on the west coast. I don't remember because it is yet to be complete, so I don't remember. But now Shankaracharya is getting his position, his respect back, which he deserved for all these years. But he was, of course, purposely neglected. We all know the reasons, which are mostly political reasons. It has nothing to do with either his scholarship or his religion or his great work at all. Just that Shankaracharya was a scholar and he traveled everywhere, he did this, that, he wrote commentaries. There are at least 40 books which are ascribed to him. We say ascribed to him because probably he wrote them, but it is also likely, or it is more likely, that many of his students composed them, and then by way of showing their respect for their guru, they would say, Iti Shri Shankaracharya Virachitam. And this happens in Indian tradition all the time. The commentary on the Rigveda is written by one Sayanacharya. He calls it Madhava because Madhava was his elder brother. Iti Madhaviye Sayana Virachita. So it is, the credit, they love to give credit to their elders, to their teachers, to their gurus, and all those things. So probably Shankara wrote that, but one of the best, what should I say, booklets. They are not huge granthas. I mean, the bhashyas are amazing, especially those on Upanishads. Sometimes I feel that Shankara Bhashya is even way superior to the Upanishad itself, especially Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. When he talks about Yajnavalkya Gargi or Yajnavalkya Maitreyi, it is amazing. I mean, I don't know how to express my uh, happiness when I read that. Anyway, so there are some texts which we must know, and one of them is Viveka Chudamani. Viveka Chudamani is read even today in all the schools that teach Advaita Vedanta because that gives you Advaita Vedanta in crux. It is simple, it is easy, it is not written in the form of Shastrartha, it is written in the form so that a common man can also understand that. There is one very different aspect of Shankara's personality. I told you that he left his wife, I'm sorry, he left his mother in Kalti, took sannyasa, and then he never came back. But when his mother was dying, he came to know about that. He went to Kalti, and he he is actually a sannyasi. He cannot perform the funeral rites for anybody, any of his family. But he said, no, she is my mother, and whether I am sannyasi or not, I will, as a son, perform her funeral rites. Nobody accompanied him. He alone did everything. Why is this example important? because it takes a lot of guts and courage to go against the social customs, right? Even we can't do that. What will people say? This is the first question which comes to our mind. But Shankara did that, and he had given a promise to his mother that he will be there for her last moments, and he was there. But more important is, just as he was a scholar, just as he was a great son, just as he was, I would say, a socio-religious reformer, okay, he also was a great devotee of God. There are so many beautiful stotras which are ascribed again to Shankaracharya. Shankara Granthavali, Stotra Ratnavali. There are many such books, which are there, which give you the most important. I think everybody knows that. Charpata Panjarika, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Moolamate. Even that is composed by Shankaracharya, or so it is said. So there are beautiful stotras. Most of them are for Shiva or mainly for Devi, for Shakti. So for Shakti also, that is Devi also, he has composed a lot of stotras. When I went to Varanasi, I wanted to visit the temple of Annapurna. It's a small temple near Kashi Vishwanath temple. Generally, people don't go there, but I have read the stotra which Shankaracharya composed for Annapurna, and it is so beautiful. I wanted to sit there and chant that, which I did. The last line goes like, Bhikshandehi Krupavalamban Kari Mata Annapurneshwari. When you start saying that, some kind of religious vibrations go through you, whether you call them religious vibrations, positive vibrations, whatever. Similarly, there is one more stotra which is amazing, and that is Narmadashtaka. Narmadashtaka is, it's not exactly it, but around 10 shlokas about the river Narmada. There is Gangashtaka also, but Narmadashtaka is better. He spent his studenthood in under on the banks of Narmada. It goes like Sabindu Sindhu Suskala Taranga Bhangaranjitam. When I went to Omkareshwar, I told my husband that as we cross the bridge from of Narmada, he also knows this stotra. Let us chant this stotra. And we were surprised. We were walking on that bridge. We were surprised that in Omkar Mandhata, this entire stotra is inscribed in stone. All those pillars of the bridge, they have this stotra inscribed there. I was so happy, not because I could see the stotra, but because people are slowly getting aware of what Shankara was, how his work was great, how what he did, we owe him so much. You don't know. Had it not been for Shankara, you would have been a Tantrika Shaiva, I would have been a Ganapatya, somebody else would have been a Upanishadika, and we would have lost our amazing treasure of Vedic lore, Vedic knowledge. Shankara was Eka Shruti Dhara, which means he just had to listen to anything once and he would know it by heart. So much so that Rajashekhara, somebody, a king, wrote 3 plays which were destroyed. Shankaracharya knew them by heart, and therefore we could rewrite them. So just imagine what a great work he has done. And I just wanted to bring that in front of you. I wanted you to be aware of to whom we owe our religion, to whom we owe our Vedic Sanatan Dharma, because there was no political asylum for Vedic Sanatan Dharma in those days. There was no support, financial support also. A lot of financial support later on came from Sudhanva and then many other kings also who liked that. But otherwise, it was a difficult time for me. So why did I do that? Why did I choose to speak about Shankar? By the way, he was born on Vaishak Shuddha Panchami. This is clearly mentioned by almost all the books which are written about Shankara. But about his death, we don't know anything. People say Vaishak Shuddha Ekadashi, but that is also not sure. Some say he died, he took Samadhi in Kedar. Some say he took Samadhi in Kanchi. In fact, some say he took Samadhi in Tibet. So you don't know anything about that, but it is commonly believed that it is Kedaranath, and therefore he has his Samadhi here. Whenever I think of Shankaracharya, I think of a verse from Vyasachala. Vyasachala was one person who wrote again a beautiful work describing the life and work of Shankaracharya. Please remember one thing. In this short time, I tried to give you as much as I could, but this was only like the proverbial tip of the iceberg, you know. There is so much he has done, and which now you can do for yourself. I must tell you about only one thing before I end with that shloka. There are some wonderful movies about Shankaracharya. And one of them, there is one in Malayalam, one in Telugu, and one in Sanskrit, which is free. It is available on YouTube for free. It is called Adi Shankaracharya with English subtitles. And I would request all of you to watch that movie. Okay, so please do that and watch that movie. Okay, and now I end my speech with the words, but before I say the words, I will tell you the meaning. Vyasachala says, I have been talking about writing about Shankara's life for so long in so many verses. Why have I done that? And he says, I haven't done that. I have done it only for Shraddha and Bhakti because I have faith and devotion for him. I have not done it for so that I become famous. I have not done it so that I can get some bhumi, land, or vitta, that is money. I have done it so that whenever I talk of Shankara, my speech, my mind, and my buddhi become pure and clear. And these are exactly the feelings which I have. I would recite that shloka and then I'm ready for your question answers. Okay. Shrimad Shankara Deshikendra Charana Dvandvambu Janmanvayi Shraddha Bhakti Vashena Kevalamiyam Syad Gochara Satkatha. Shraddha Bhakti Vashena. So I told you, Shraddha and Bhakti. No Khyatyayi, not for fame. Nacha Pujanaya, not so that you can come and worship me, you know, or Vyasacharya. No, no Khyatyayi, Nacha Pujanaya Kathita. No Bhumi Vitta Aptaye. Nothing to gain from this, you know. Vacham me pavitum. So that my vacha, my speech will be pavitra, and that is why vacham me pavitum tadiya charitam bhobhi sada tadvanam. Iti Shankaraya namo namah.
Dhanyavad Sucheta ji. That was a very enlightening and knowledgeful session. Dhanyavad for increasing our gyan. And now we will take some questions. So Manoj Kumar ji, please go ahead.
Namaskar to everybody. Sucheta ji, Charan Sparsh. Hope you can hear me. Is it clear?
Yes, I can. Yes.
I'm very proud to have been born in Shankara's birthplace, very close to Kaladi and Thiruvam.
Okay.
And I've lived, I was born outside Kerala. And it's only in the last 10 years that when I came back, I was hit by the legacy of Adi Shankara. It's unbelievable. And today I'm so proud and happy that in such a short time, you have given us this amazing information about Adi Shankara, which most Hindus, I think Sanatanis have forgotten. Ma'am, I just want to add one thing. I will leave the others to ask questions. In fact, I am closely involved now with a trust which is working on reviving the legacy of Adi Shankara. In
Oh,
fact,
yeah.
today I learned something new from you. One of the trustees told me that he has established mathas across. And we realized in Kerala, hundreds of them are now shut down. We are working on reviving them.
Yes, I know.
This is our tribute to Adi Shankara. So I want every one of us to read about Shankaracharya, what ma'am said, and try to pick up something that we can all contribute to.
Yeah, and
That
not
I just
only
close.
read, not only read, but practice that.
Absolutely, ma'am. I will leave now because I don't want to hog the time. Thank you so much. Ma'am, thank you so much. Charan Sparsh to you.
Pleasure.
Stedman, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sucheta ji. Lovely presentation. Forgive my ignorance. Could you say something about what you described as some of the sort of tantric practices or beliefs that Adi Shankara attempted to, I don't know, counter in some sense to maintain the tradition of Sanatana Dharma?
Certainly, you know, all these tantric people, they were sectarian people. They are not called religious people. Though apparently they have something like Shiva, a different type of Shiva, not the one which we people worship. And that Shiva is their deity too. But at the same time, they have horrible practices. I told you about Panchamakara. So they follow everything and anything in the temples and people. In fact, if you remember, Shankara temples in many places, they are almost underground. You have to get down, you know. Always you have to climb down the steps so that they are not easily seen. So Tantra is that, and most of the Tantra, that is the cults, you know, they were non-Vedic and they were atheist. So they did not accept any God and they did not conform to the Vedic, I wouldn't even say religion, but Vedic philosophy. And that is why they were having a detrimental effect on the psyche of Indians at that time.
R.
Am I
Jairam
clear?
ji, please go ahead.
Sorry?
R.
Yeah.
Jairam.
Yes. Namaste ji. I've just got one question.
Sure.
I've read somewhere that even though Shankaracharya started off as an Advaitic philosopher, if you read his later writings like the Saundarya Lahari, where he is almost sort of praising, it's like a bhakti type of writing, it seems that it's a bit more of a Dvaitic type of thinking. What is your commentary on that?
Okay. I would say one thing. I think I mentioned this, that there is a different aspect of his personality. And I mentioned all those stotras or devotional songs also, which do not quite go along with his other writing also. Anyway, what I feel is, you know, we call that apocrypha. Apocrypha is something where the texts are ascribed to him. And that is why I mentioned Viveka Chudamani. I did not mention Saundarya Lahari at all. Because I told you that somebody else writes it and then they ascribe it to Shankara and say that it was Shankara's work. It was Shankara's work. So that's all I can say, because you cannot be sure who actually wrote that. But about Upanishadic commentaries, the Upanishad Bhashya, Gita Bhashya, there is absolutely no doubt.
Kamal ji.
Namaste, Mahodaya.
Namaste.
Kamal Rauniar from Manchester, UK. Abhinandan, Adar Abhinandan to you. Very enlightening program. Just one question. This Nirvana Shatakam, there is a very nice story attached to it.
Yeah.
Could you sort of throw some light on, because they say the Guru was blind and was asking Shankara.
Yeah, I mean, there are.
So could you please shed some light on it? Dhanyavad.
The thing is, you know, I would love to, but there are so many stories which go along with every stotra. You know that Kanakadhara stotra has a story. Hastamadaka Stotra has another. Totakacharya had another story. So it is difficult, but Nirvana Shatkam is important because Manobuddhyahankara and Shivoham Shivoham is something which everybody knows. And the stories I feel come later on, to show how great Shankara was. Shankara himself never thought of himself as a great person or anything of the sort, but the stories are added on. What we call generally in a text, when something is added later, it is called interpolation. So these are interpolated stories, superimposed later. So this thing happens not only with Shankaracharya, but with anybody and everybody who becomes a great personality, famous personality.
Sumukha ji, please go ahead.
So in an era where youngsters in India are somehow influenced by the Western culture, what would be your message to the youngsters of India? So that's my question.
Okay, my first thing is, what I tell my own, they are no longer kids, but my children and grandchildren, is that before you blame or before you deride, it's a sad situation, but we ourselves deride our own tradition. Before you deride anything, you must know what you are doing. Do you know Shankara's philosophy? No. So how can you say that it is not good? Do you know Vedas? No. Then how can you say they are useless? I mean, people, I have seen articles written like that they are outdated, Sanskrit is a dead language, this and that. What do they know? Unless and until you know everything, you cannot, not everything, but unless and until you know it, I will not accept the fact that you don't like it. So basically, my advice is, it is impossible, to learn Sanskrit and read all the texts at this age. So read the translations. They are available. They are available in almost, especially Shankara's works. Why Shankara? Even Gita for that matter. Everything is available, and then read translations. If you have difficulty, there are gurus around who will help you as far as possible. I would also like to help all of you, and you can go ahead. So reading translations and books about anything, whether Shankara or Veda or Gita or Upanishad, is the most important thing.
Prashant ji, please go ahead.
Hello, Sucheta ji. So that was one of the best ever sessions I have attended of yours. I was like completely engrossed. Thank you so much for leading us through those ages and through through Shankaraji's words. So I have one question regarding how exactly did Tantra as a cult evolve post Shankara? So because we have evidences of existence of tantric cults like Kapalikas, Kaulas, and the Yogini cults in central India, in Odisha, and so on. So did Tantra become Vedic from being Avedic post Shankaracharya's period? So this would be one first part of my question. The second part of my question would be, especially with respect to the Yogini cult, I would like to ask you that this was the transition of mother goddess worship, or what we can call in the rural areas, once that started getting incorporated into the mainstream Vedic cult. That's how the 64 yoginis emerged, the 81 yoginis emerged, and so on.
Right.
So does Shankaracharya's period coincide with incorporation of the various rural deities into mainstream Vedic Hinduism? So so the question is twofold. How exactly did Shankara influence the existing Tatra? Did they become Avedic to Vedic? And how did he achieve it by incorporation of these non-Vedic deities, or rural deities, mother goddess worshippers, and so on into mainstream Hinduism, just like he did for the five-fold worship, if I remember. Yeah.
Okay. The thing is, you yourself are a Shankara, so you will know a lot more. You obviously have studied Tantra. honestly, Tantra is something which is non-Vedic, or as we call it, Avedic. Vedas never say that. But in all society, all the time, and all over the world, there is not everybody is good, Not everybody is a class. There are people who are called masses. Even as Rigveda was being written, Atharva Veda was also being composed, and there is only black magic in that. So remember that in any given society, both the streams go parallel to each other. And now your question is whether it was, what is the source, It's difficult to say, but like I said, Atharva Veda, and then there was a lot of black magic, and that stream continued all through the time, centuries, I would say millenniums actually. And from that, Tantra must have come. Rigveda or Advaita Vedanta, things like that, they never talk of this Tantra. So Tantra came mainly from non-Vedic. I think I mentioned that atheistic and agnostics. Agnostics are those, who do not believe in anything. They only have doubts. So from these people, Tantra came. And I think even today there are people who follow that. And they are not part of the mainstream Hinduism at all. I don't think they are they are not part of Vedic Sanatan Dharma. I have never used the word Hindu in my talk, you must have realized, because I sincerely believe that Vedic Sanatan Dharma is something entirely different.
Mahendra ji, please go ahead.
Namaskar, Professor Ji.
Namaste.
I just wanted to ask you a question that Sanatana Dharma was, is, and will be in the manifest and unmanifest. However, we see the growth of Islam and Christianity in Bharat Desh itself. What do you feel is the future for, of course, Sanatana Dharma will always be there, but in its manifested form, Professor, can you throw some light as to what you feel is the future of Bharat, and will there ever be a Akhand Bharat at any point in the future?
A very tricky question, for the simplest reason that as far as possible, I avoid making any political comments, especially religio-political comments. But I know, I live in India and I know how horrible things have become, and our government is trying so much to do a lot of things, but there is only resistance from the people. They themselves don't do anything. And I would still say the future is not bleak. The future is bright, because whenever there is a tunnel, there is an end to that tunnel, and there is light at the other end. Not only that, but government is definitely taking steps that even though we are so-called secular, inverted comma, underlined, italics, everything, the word secular, which is a word, which has changed the entire ethos of our country. And therefore, I think again, it's better that I make no political comments, because you don't know tomorrow what will happen. People will troll me, to say the least.
Anand ji, please go ahead.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Wonderful lecture.
Thank
I will like to have your comments on two areas.
Huh?
One is the Panchayatan Puja that
Huh.
was instituted or said to be instituted by Shankaracharya.
Yeah.
Secondly, the condition of Khandan Mandan, the started, that is
Yes.
only two people enter the room,
Right.
but one person exits, the way he did with Mandan Mishra as well as so many others, which is a
Right.
great thing, because that is, he is putting his faith on the unwill every single time. So
Right.
if
You
I
are
lose,
absolutely
if
right.
I lose, I take you. I mean, I take you as Guru. If you lose, you take me as Guru. And I believe that is a very great management principle in this.
Yeah, it is definitely. You will be surprised that I only mentioned one such Shastrartha, between Shankara and Mandana Mishra, right? And you know who was the judge for that Vada Vivada, as we call it? It was Mandan Mishra's wife. And why I like that the most is, which shows that she was way above the level of these two. So that was a Purva Paksha. I think I mentioned Purva Paksha and Uttara Paksha. First, somebody propounds his theory, the other one either accepts that or refutes that. And that is how this went on. Modi ji, I'm sorry, I'm not bringing politics into that, but Modi ji had once mentioned to this uh, conversation or discussion between Mandan Mishra and Shankaracharya as the best ever conversation or dialogue that could happen. And I was so glad. I was so glad that he mentioned that in his speech. And your first question was about, I forget that. Oh, Panchayatana Puja. Yeah, Panchayatana Puja is an attempt to bring all the gods together. As we know, we don't have 33 crores of God, 33 koti. It is not Trayas Trimshat Koti in the sense of crores. It is 33 gods of 33 grades. Just as we say Ucha Koti or Parakoti. So similarly, this is like Ashtavasu, Ekadasha Rudra, Dwadasha Aditya, and Aho and Ratra. These are the 33 gods. But we still don't know them. And the world blames us. The world laughs at us. And unless and until we know that, we cannot face the world and we cannot do anything about it. So Panchayatana Puja is just to bring all these gods together, and that is why it was very popular during that time and even post Shankara period.
There is many times of Abhinav Shankar who followed Adi Shankaracharya. What is your opinion about it?
It's difficult to say, because now, as you know, Kanchi Pitham was established much later. Adi Shankara never did that. He had a matha only in Shrungeri in the south. So he is called, that is Adi Shankara, is also called Apurva Shankara. That is, before him, there was no Shankaracharya, but after him, there was a long tradition of Shankaracharyas. Later on, it was no longer a name of a person. Later on, it was a position. Okay? And that is why this happened.
Ravinder ji, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Namaskar, Jai Sharda. I am actually into this struggle of reopening of Sharda Peeth. I am a Kashmiri Pandit. I am in exile. I am based in Delhi, but I do travel to Kashmir. I have no question, but just to inform you that I am struggling for reopening of Sharda Peeth and exploration of Sharda civilization. I have 150 members across LOC. Those who are Muslims, we have flowers laid there on Sharda Peetham. I have done programs where I have brought those people live, Sharda live on the monitor here in India.
Okay.
So I would like to participate in another program because I was not made an entry earlier. I tried my best to enter the program. I was not allowed. My number is written in the chat box. So I would definitely like to be a part of it because I am connected to some researchers also there. And everything is explored, most of it, but it's a huge sea. But I am trying my best. I am a foot soldier. I have gone to LOC last year for Sharda Puja. This year I am going on 14th September. Sharda Divas is Ganga Ashtami. It is Sharda Ashtami in Bhadon, Shukla Paksh, when we used to have annual yatra. And I am going this year again on 14th September to Titwal LOC. And
you are doing such a wonderful thing, and for
so
such
please,
a great
I would
cause.
like to be connected with this group. My number is written, my name is written in the chat box.
Okay.
Jai Shankara.
I wish you all the best in your venture.
Dhanyavad Ravinder ji.
Sucheta ji, I have a question. This is Amit Gore here. You start at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned about his date of birth or the year of the birth, around 700 AD. I am assuming you must have heard of P.N. Oak, Purushottam Nageshwar.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
Pune Oak.
Yes, Pune Oak. Now, in his book on the rewriting the Indian history, he has kind of again gone back to this dating mess we have, and he kind of said that Shankara and even the Buddha, they were actually born maybe hundreds of years earlier than what we know. So, I mean, do you have something to say on that? Thank you.
Not that. For one thing, Pune Oak or P.N. Oak writes something, which not everybody agrees with. Every scholar has a choice and freedom to say whatever he wants. In Sanskrit, you can interpret one word in 10 different ways, as you all know. And therefore, I will not comment on anything on which Pune Oak has said. Secondly, Shankaracharya and Buddha, they are, basically the philosophy is not very different. What is Buddhism? Buddhism took just some ideas from Vedic Sanatan Dharma and created Buddhism. They did not come up with any new. They just said that, oh, we don't want Himsa, so let's have Ahimsa. We don't want this, so let's have that. That is okay. But since there is a similarity between the two, Shankaracharya is called Prachanna Buddha. Prachanna in the sense disguise. So he is a Buddha in disguise of a sannyasi, just to show that both are similar. Doesn't mean he was a Buddha, he couldn't have been.
Sucheta, we are running out of time. There's a couple of more questions in the chat, but I think it will be a very long session. But it was a very inspiring session, and everyone will be gone with a lot of knowledge. So thank you again for accepting our invitation and doing this presentation. Dhanyavad.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm glad people have started thinking about Shankaracharya. Thank you.
Dhanyavad audience for attending this session, and we're looking forward to having you for our next session. Namaskar.